Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be discussing one of our NG firewall applications, the HTTPS Inspector. My name is Shannon Miles, and I'm part of the product marketing team here, and I'll be your host today. I also have with us our Director of QA, John Coffin, who will be demonstrating this application and answering any questions along the way. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please use the audio panel to select your preference. If you have selected to use a phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. Just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, so you'll have the chance to rewatch and revisit areas that you need to follow up on. And we'll also be answering questions throughout the presentation, so please submit any questions through the Q&A chat box. And you can always send questions to sales@untangle.com and support@untangle.com. Now, before I move on, I just want to reiterate that this is a highly technical webinar. And if you're not familiar with the Untangle solution or networking concepts, then I would suggest you take a look at our 101 webinar series that covers more higher level topics. You can view a full listing of our webinars on our website. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to John.
Thanks so much, Shannon. So the HTTP Inspector is a fairly new application for Untangle. It covers a real need as more and more of the internet traffic is encrypted across your network. You have to have a way of inspecting that encrypted traffic. Otherwise, you have no idea what's going on your network. Some of the key things about HTTP Inspector, it's a standalone app. It works in conjunction with WebFilter. So it's actually, if you buy WebFilter, you get HTTP Inspector as a free bonus. If you've bought it in the past too and you currently have subscription, you'll also get HTTP Inspector. It works best with application control and WebFilter. It works with those two to decrypt the traffic for the applications. The applications can flag it depending on your rules, and then re-encrypt it and send it back to the user. So the user actually will see it as a secured site. There are some types of websites and tools that do encryption, excuse me, that require their own certificate. And there are ways to ignore that traffic, so it's not necessary to decrypt it. And we'll go over the different rules on how to create a special bypass. One case, just as a sampler, is Dropbox. Dropbox does an encrypted connection to their servers to sync the shared volumes. Unfortunately, Dropbox has actually hard-coded their certificate. So there's no way to look at that traffic without the application ignoring their own traffic. We'll go through here. Here's going to be your basic setup to manage encrypted web browsing. You're going to need WebFilter. You're going to install the HTTP Inspector, and then of course reports, so you can have reporting on those. They're just available on your left-hand side, and you just install them and log in. This is the more technical part of the discussion. One of the things that people get across is, why do I need HTTP Inspector? Well, the way modern internet traffic works is that when a user, for example, goes to Facebook, the first thing it does is say, I need Facebook's certificate so I can talk to it. So it does a request to the trusted certificates, gets the certificate, and then encrypts its request for Facebook and then sends it out. Of course, once it goes across the Untangle, it can't read what's being requested. It doesn't even know the site it's going to. All it knows is an IP address. And so when Facebook gets that encrypted request, it has the key to unlock that encrypted traffic. And it unencrypts it, finds out what the user wants, and then re-encrypts the traffic with the key that the user has and sends it back across the Untangle server. That all occurs when the traffic going across the router, it won't be able to see what's inside this encrypted traffic. So it has no way of applying the rules that you decide for your internal traffic. That's the real basics of it. And here we go into more detail on how the keys are exchanged between Facebook and the local user. And of course, Untangle has no idea what's going on underneath. So the key idea for HTTP Inspector is to proxy those requests so we can see what's going on underneath. And that's how we do it with this particular slide. What's going to happen is Untangle is going to see the request from the user to get the Facebook key. What we're going to do is go ahead and request that key from Facebook, but that key is going to be held on the Untangle router itself. And then we're going to pass the Untangle key to the user to tell it to encrypt it with this key. That's a key that we know how to unencrypt. So we can look at all the traffic, then re-encode it with the correct certificate for Facebook and send it off for Facebook, or block it, as the case may be. So I know this sounds quite involved, but I think once we do the demo, it'll be a lot clearer on how the traffic goes through. Let me go to the demo now. So we'll go right here to our, sorry. So here we go. I have a computer that's set up behind Facebook, behind Untangle, and I can currently go to Facebook even though I have web filters set up to block social sites. Go right here to my social site, and you see I have social networking is blocked, but I'm still able to get to Facebook. And that's because the traffic has been encrypted across Untangle. So Untangle cannot read the encrypted traffic going across it. So the way to fix that is I install HTTP Inspector. I turn it on, which means I plan to intercept those encrypted traffic and then re-encrypt it with my own certificate. Excuse me. So in this case, I'll take a look, and you see that my browser says it's an untrusted website. That's because we're using our own certificate. And this is the main difficulty with using Untangle HTTP Inspector. It requires the Untangle certificate to be installed on every PC behind it. And that requires a little bit of effort. The easiest way is just to go ahead and download the root certificate from HTTP Inspector. And we'll go ahead and download that. And there's two install steps for installing this on the user's machine. The first one, you can just go ahead and download it and launch it. And this installs the Windows certificate installer. So you just hit install, hit next. And you don't want to use the automatic because it actually puts it in the wrong place. So what you want to do is say install in the following store, and you want the trusted certificate. And after you install it there, click next and install it there. That installs it on the Windows certificate storage, and that is good for Chrome and Internet Explorer. Those two use the built-in Windows certificate installer. The one exception is Firefox, which I'm using here. we actually have to install that directly onto Firefox. And you just go to Options, Advanced, View Certificate, and Import. And we'll just go ahead and install the certificate. And we want to set it to Trust CA to identify websites. And now, if we try to go to Facebook, we see we get our block page, because what Untangle has done is when this computer asks for Facebook, it says, okay, Untangle says use this encryption key. So the user encrypted their request for Facebook with a key that we know how to unlock. So as it came across to Untangle encrypted, we could actually see that key and block it. Now, for example, maybe there's websites you want to let the users go, but you actually want to log that traffic. You can also do that with HTTPS Inspector. But we'll go ahead and change our setting that we just want to flag, which means we just want to log that traffic. Now, if we go back to here, and we'll go ahead and put Facebook again, and you see we're able to get Facebook, but we'll notice the key is now an Untangle key, which means when we go look at our event log, we'll actually see the Facebook listed in there. And that enables us to better regulate our traffic, because maybe we want to let Facebook in a certain amount of time during the day, maybe lunch times, after work, and so forth, but not all day, for example. And then if we look at our log in our HTTPS Inspector, we can see the sites that we actually went to. Part of the HTTPS Inspector setup is also making rules. I highly recommend using a lot of the built-in rules that we have and avoid inspecting all traffic. There are cases where a lot of applications will break due to their internal keys not matching the one we're giving them. And this is, you can look at some of these rules and it will tell you how to avoid some of that kind of traffic. For example, one thing in here, for example, Dropbox is not in here. So that's one rule that I generally set up. And we'll do that by just putting a, we'll use the certificate name here. So the certificate name is going to have Dropbox in it. And we're going to tell it to ignore this traffic, because we don't want to inspect Dropbox, because otherwise it'll break our application. Or maybe we do. We will actually want to block that, so we're going to have that inspected. So we'll go ahead and add that. Now, any kind of Dropbox encryption that goes across will be ignored, and we won't try to override the key with the key that we have. The most difficult part of implementing HTTPS Inspector is installing the keys on each computer. It does require some effort. There are some pretty good ways to get facilitate that much better. One of it is the GPO. If you're running a Windows domain, you can actually have GPO install that certificate on each one. The exception, there are some ways, but the exception is Firefox. You'll need to write a script for the GPO if you want to install that encryption key on Firefox. It's the one exception to web browsers on Windows not encrypting traffic. Some of the other areas that you can use is So on event logs, it also makes it a lot better because now you'll be able to see that traffic. As you can see, it was blocked previously in that traffic. So we take a look, and you see it later passed through because we changed the rules, but it's still categorized in this. Let me see. I think that's all there is to installing it and using that. At this point, I will probably open it up for questions.
Yeah, we have a good amount of questions that came in, John. Um,
Okay.
if you wanted to
Right.
check on those, I can.
Yeah, I'll start going through this.
Um, let's see. It says, doesn't WebFilter base the IP of HTTPS sites?
It does, but the problem you get into with it can't block all IP addresses, for example, because for Facebook, most people use something called CDNs, which are just content delivery systems. For example, Amazon Cloud delivers a lot of content for many websites. I know Facebook uses Akamai, so you could block Facebook IPs, but you won't block Facebook because they're actually coming from another provider. Just trying to get to the questions here.
It says, I have the Untangle certificate on my phone. Why do I still have trouble with some applications, such as Twitter?
There are some applications, and it's really a case by case. You'll have to look at the event logs. The applications actually have hard-coded a certificate, and it's the only certificate they trust. I'm not clear on Twitter, but I know on, for example, Dropbox, they hard-code the certificate and do not enable any other certificate to be accepted for that. I wouldn't be surprised if Twitter is doing that on the application phone itself. Let's see here. There's one here. Can you detect SSH on port 443? That pretty much any traffic on port 443 will be detected. So anything that uses an encryption. Let's see. Oh, good. So the bypass rules. If you have a bypass rule on WebFilter, it does not bypass HTTP Inspector. WebFilter will still not handle that traffic, but it still will encrypt and decrypt. You can actually, if you just don't want HTTP Inspector to encrypt to inspect some traffic, the better way to do it is with a policy manager and just create a rack without HTTP Inspector in that rack. That's usually the best way to, if you have a whole set of websites or you have a particular user that does not want their traffic unencrypted, you can use a policy manager and make a rack that has that does not have HTTP Inspector on that. Let's see. Per user, per computer under the admin account. I'm not too sure what that question is involved. It does require the root certificate to be installed on each computer. You don't have to install it per user because the certificate trust is actually global across all users on that computer. Like I said, if you do have a very large user base and you have a domain server, the best thing to do is use the GPO to push out the certificates so you don't have to do each one at a time. Safari. So interesting thing is on the Mac, all the web browsers on the Mac use the Mac certificate storage. So all you have to do is install it on the Mac security certificate location, and then after that, all the web browsers will work correctly. As far as Mac environments, yeah, it's the same thing. You just need to install the certificate on each Mac and also the phones that are running there, just so it understands that it's allowed to accept your specific Untangle router certificate. So each router has its own certificate, so you just need to add that to everything that's behind that.
There seems to be a lot of questions, John, about installing this on mobile devices, iPads or smartphones.
It's really straightforward to do that. I wish I had one on me, and if you want, I can see about putting something up on the web on how to install a certificate. I believe there is I was just checking to see if on HTTPS Inspector, I will probably add some screenshots to the HTTPS Inspector on the wiki on how to install it on iPads and iPhones. It's really the kind of the same idea, although there's definitely some extra steps, and you either have to use the device management console or use the iTunes that is specific for that iPad. Yes, the same certificate is used on all the computers behind a specific Untangle. Each Untangle that's deployed generates its own certificate. So there isn't one certificate for all the computers that are behind every Untangle. So you have to have the specific certificate for the Untangle that it's going to be behind. So one comment on that is, like, if you have a bunch of satellite offices and each one has its own Untangle, unfortunately you're going to have to install, if you have a computer that moves around between different satellite offices, you will have to install the certificate for each of those Untangles that it travels across. One thing I did fail to mention on 11.2, which is coming up in this next quarter for release, we will actually have an installer that installs it on Windows for every location it has to. So instead of having to install in two places, you can just run our installer and it will install the certificate for your Untangle in the correct places.
Yeah, did you want to show
Yes.
show them that, John?
Yeah, I can show that right here. So this is I didn't have this certificate. Here we go. So this is 11.2. It's not released yet. It will be released out, I believe, this coming quarter. So on HTTPS Inspector, you probably noticed it's very familiar. We have this download root certificate installer. This will download an executable that will allow you to install on each Windows box without having to install in two different places. It makes it really easy, and you can actually mail this installer out to people, and then you don't have to worry about them selecting the right settings. They just run it on their computer and they're set to go. You can also do that, use that, and put that as a GPO rule if you have a Windows domain. The block notification page is actually under Web Filter, and you can customize that if you have the branding manager. And I thought there was a rule for Dropbox. And oh yes, I'm sorry, there is a Dropbox ignore rule. I just didn't see that. Does HTTP Inspector slow down the internal internet access? It does very, you wouldn't even notice the difference because there is time to, has to decrypt the traffic coming in, inspect it, then re-encrypt it, and then send it to the user. So there is some, it's quite CPU based, so if you do notice some kind of slowdown, it's probably that you might have to upgrade your CPU depending on how many sites are being encrypted and decrypted. Let's go to some of the other questions here. Let's see some of the other. Yeah, so somebody was asking about SNI. It's called the server name indication. Most web browsers now will include in the clear what domain they're trying to go through. So this is a case where you can actually not use HTTP Inspector. But the problem is it isn't commonly used across the board. There's actually very few sites that use SNI, and that's why if you notice, if you're not using HTTP Inspector and use SNI on Web Filter, many of the sites will not correctly get blocked. Your biggest players do use that correctly, but there's still a large portion of people that do not use SNI. If you're using Internet Explorer, for example, on Windows XP, it does not support SNI. So those people are actually not blocked in that case. So this affects users bringing their laptops home. No, because even though the certificate is added, it's not required that the Untangle certificate be used for any website. They will just be using the common certificates when they go home, so they won't see any difference. Let's see. Yes, the certificates can be installed on Chromebooks, and you can use the Google admin panel. We'll need to probably put something up on our wiki to help you through those steps. There are a couple of tricky steps to get that installed, but we'll definitely have that added to the wiki. Let's see here. There's a couple questions about slowing down the internet. It really depends on the computing power of your Untangle box. In general, I have not had to upgrade any live sites when I added HTTP Inspector. It was pretty much minimal load added to the box. You should not see a huge difference.
All right, John. A lot of these questions are very specific, so please, go to our wiki. We have a lot of questions answered, and we have a lot of community areas that you can get your questions answered, including the forums, the wiki, as well as you can always contact support. If we didn't get to your question, again, we apologize, but we're gonna wrap this up. And thank you so much for joining us. We hope that this demonstration helped you to better understand the Untangle NG Firewall solution and our HTTPS Inspector. If you have any additional questions, again, please, you can always contact us through the wiki, the forums, and support. We do have another Tech Talks next month on July 28th. It's around captive portal and bring your own device. There were a couple questions about that. So please go to our website and to our webinars page, and you can see all the upcoming webinars and register there. The recording, we will send out the recording within 24 hours of this event, and we'll also post it on our YouTube channel. So thank you again, and thank you, John, and hope everyone has a wonderful day.